Welcome aboard the USS Aeronome. To become a member of our crew, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. As a patron of Perfect Organism, you'll receive exclusive perks and early access to content. Incoming audio transmission received. Please proceed to Subdeck 3 to begin playback. Thank you, and welcome aboard.
All right, sweethearts, what are you waiting for? Breakfast in bed? Another glorious day in the Corps. Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
Where's Basket? Let's rock!
Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I am your host, Jaime Prater, and I am joined by a plethora of people and my main co-host, Patrick Green. So welcome, everyone. Shaun,
What up,
Conar,
everybody?
Clara, Bryant, Gogo, Mykal.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Hello.
Hello.
Hola.
Yo.
We are covering, I think, every continent tonight. I think even Antarctica. We have somebody connecting from Antarctica tonight, which is really a special thing.
Yeah. So we are doing this episode because based off the last Queen episode we did, there was just a lot of feedback and a lot of tomatoes being squeezed. Memes being thrown at me and other people, just as we discussed the Queen. So I'm very excited to. I see you laughing, Conar. We're in our videos. I'm very excited to talk about this again and get kind of the feel from the community on how they feel about the Queen. So I'm just going to throw it out there. I know I started with before that the Queen's never really worked for me. It's not that she hasn't worked for me. I just think I've seen her so much. I feel like I'm onto new things. And I'm curious how she works for everybody else.
I talked to some of you guys the other day on a message, and my feeling on it is that there's almost three different ways it could go. I think the original Alien movie should have continued with the egg morphing. I think that would have suited it, made it much more of a, just wild concept, especially with Prometheus and Covenant and the way that whole thing is being established. I like that version. I do believe the Queen, however, in Aliens fit Aliens, because if you look at that movie was really like it actually played off the whole insect vibe, sort of, the ants and the Queen and the hive and the whole 9 yards. And I think for that movie, she fits. But unfortunately, I think after that movie, Resurrection just killed all parts of what they had established in Aliens. And then there's another version, which is like your Aliens versus Predator, which I think should be considered its own universe and its own system.
How dare you bring that movie
Yeah,
up?
I know. I know.
But bring that up in my house.
I can't help it. I'm involved in all of it.
You're about to be a stranger.
Don't speak.
The thing about that is they used it solely for a cedar. That was literally made to lay the eggs. They took the eggs, they put them on the planets, started the whole process, and went from there. But, like I said, I think in the context, it fits Aliens the best. Other than that, I don't really have a need for it. Like I said, I thought egg morphing that was on the cutscene from Alien was absolutely just terrifying, in the fact that you're being transformed from the inside out. It was crazy. I wish they would have kept that in and just kept that storyline. But I mean, different directors, different versions, and they go from there.
What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do? Maybe we could build a fire, sing a couple of songs, huh? Why don't we try that?
I think it works. I think both, actually, what Mykal says and the Queen both could work independently. The Queen, I think, brought a nice terror to it. The scene when she turns around and you see what's making these eggs is classic. It's awesome. And I mean, movie is not included. I think between the comics and the graphic novels, you could see the Queen. It works, though. Jaime, you have a good point. Something new or used differently wouldn't hurt. But I think in general, it works. It's terrifying. It's, you see what gets this whole species going, and it's something you want to prevent. You don't want to get near. And itself, you could do tons of mythology behind that it hasn't even been discovered yet. How do the queens made? Are they always made? When they're by themselves, like the War Alien, was it trying to make a queen? Was it just trying to keep itself going? And, maybe they multiply in different ways, and just the queen appears when it's time to fully infest an area. Who the fuck knows? But there's all sorts of different avenues to explore, which haven't yet. And in Alien, there was that ship with all those eggs, and there was no explanation. And it was nice to see what Cameron did. It was an explanation that made sense. And Ridley at that time, and still never really had any desire to explore. He really was all about the space jockey. He was before and obviously way after Alien. That was his baby. That's what he wanted to explore. And I think the Queen itself just brings a whole new life into the species and the franchise, and it just works. It just works.
I think my question is, does, for everyone, and we've discussed this a little bit before, but does the Queen, for lack of better terms, dumb down the alien? Does it make the species more like an ant hive?
Nope.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that was just kind of a way of explaining them in the director's cut, just kind of the way they communicate. Because I just think they just kind of adapt to whatever the situation is. If there's one or two trapped in a ship, they might not need a queen. But if they're, infesting and they're taking over an area, they might need one. I think it's adaptable. I don't think it takes away from anything. I don't think it dumbs anything down. Like, I don't watch Alien or Alien 3 and think, oh man, this thing's controlled by a matriarch. Oh no, it's stupid. No, I don't think that at all. I don't think it dumbs down anything.
I just got to jump in and say, bees, man, bees have hives.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the comics are really what pushed it. I mean, if you look at almost every comic that's out from Dark Horse and Aliens, except for the ones that just came out recently, every single one of them, they always have the Queen, then they always have, you have your drones, and then you have, and in the whole, every time it's a search for that one. And I have to agree too. I don't think it dumbs down the series. I think it kind of branches off. But what I think happened was, and this is I'm not busting on Alien Resurrection because we all know how we feel about that movie. But my thing is, the way they did it, they actually dumbed her down as a point. I think they made her look ridiculous. And I think that really killed it for everybody. Because myself, when I saw the Queen in Aliens, I was just like, it blew me away as a kid. Like, it was scary and just out of this world. And it brought around a whole, everything to it.
I agree that it got dumbed down. Resurrection, I'll apologize a little for that film. I like it a little bit, but I can excuse the fact that those are cloned aliens. They're supposed to be inferior aliens, They're supposed to be a little bit messed up. But then we also have the Queen in AVP, and it's almost like a dinosaur. Compared to the way the movements happen, the way
it's like a T-Rex
treated. Yeah. And I think that's the problem. Is the Queen the Queen's not the problem. It's the people that are using this tool in the storytelling. Like Cameron put so much attention, and Stan Winston and all those effects people put so much attention into making this creature move a certain way, shoot it a certain way. It's reminiscent of Black Widow. It feels like that in that film. And then that gets lost, it starts growling and things like that. I think if you, even from a story point of view, if you look at some of the extended universe, the tools or the storyteller who's using the tools, and that the Queen, I think, has been used in a lot of cool story ways within comics and books. When you take concepts like, say, the Queen of Queens, who can telepathically communicate with the rest of the species and is influencing people's dreams and calling certain individuals to her. I think those things would be fascinating, but we really haven't seen them taken on in a cinematic way. It's like Cameron gave this gift to the storytellers, and I mean, it was used effectively, I think, in Alien 3, but, then it got thrown away, sort of.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Brian. It's the fact that in Alien Resurrection, the Queen was just used as a glorified incubation chamber for the newborn.
Yep.
And AVP, she was just essentially a breeder. Then, oh, wait, let's get her moving around. Oh, she's a tyrannosaur. No grace whatsoever in her movements, so there's no terror whatsoever. But I don't think it's really what she actually is, it's what she represents. It's the more terrifying aspect that works for me. Because, okay, her design's incredible. She looks terrifying in Aliens, but it's more that she represents Ripley's outburst in the meeting that she had before she left for LV-426, where she says, if only one of these things gets in here, then that will be all. Because what she is an avatar of like end times, whereas a singular drone is like a rifle. She's more like a WMD, where she's established, then everything in the vicinity is just dead. And she breeds these things on an industrial scale, which really is sort of goes back to Giger's biomechanical design, overarching everything about the alien. So she can work if you just do her properly. Even don't feature her at all, because there was a huge theory going around in Alien Isolation where there was a queen on the Sevastopol, but you never see her. But it's just that thought in the back of your mind that she is there.
Yep.
So you don't even actually necessarily have to show her. You just have to sort of give the hints that she is there.
And you don't even need to build up to her, either have her as a surprise. I can't speak English. Have her as a surprise at the end of a movie, or have her be revealed early on so you know what you're in for. Because we know what the Queen's about now, so there's no need to kind of pussyfoot around it. For me, she still works. I mean, discounting the AVP movies, we've got 6 movies, including the prequels, and only 2 of them have featured the Queen. And even one of those, it wasn't like, I don't know how to phrase this, like a legit Queen. It came from a clone. So, of course, it's going to act different. Just as Ripley acted differently. She didn't act like a human. She was a bit different, as did the Queen. So, really, we've only had one proper movie where we've seen the Queen utilized. And if they can go back to that and have it used just like James Cameron's one was, like the movement and all that, I'm all for it. It worked perfectly for me.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Well, what can I say about the Queen, except she's one of my favorites apart from the runner, because I was so young when I watched both Alien and Aliens. The 2 movies are kind of like the same thing for me. They're not separated. Also, the comment that James Cameron dumbed down the Queen is absolutely insulting. It was Dan O'Bannon that came up with the inspiration that the aliens were kind of like in a hive setup. He took the inspiration from the insect world. So when people say that about the Queen, that it made it into an insect and less mysterious, I think it's ridiculous. I think that we are going to see some sort of like successful structure like that of the insect world in space. Why wouldn't it be that way? It seems quite efficient. It also shows that the alien queen can also procreate without a mate. So I think that's even more important, that this female can lead her species, can kind of reproduce on a constant basis without having to depend on someone else to like fertilize the eggs. So as far as I know, from what we've been presented in all of the comics, books and films, is that the queen is self-sufficient. So yeah, I think she's just enormous and beautiful, and she's kind of like she's everything representational of the horrors of birth as well. She doesn't feel held back by her pregnancy, having and making all of these babies. Not like human beings, you know, have this fear of childbirth, and that's all representative with like the chest burster and the face hugger and impregnation. Whereas with her, it seems like to be creating these eggs and then giving this life to other life forms seems to be like an honor. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with the alien queen. I think she's a beautiful creation. She's very what do you say, Lovecraftian in her design as well. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with the creation of the queen. I think it's very natural for it to be part of the alien life cycle, and the fact that she can create without having to depend on others, and at the same time the species doesn't even have to depend on the queen. They're all independent of each other still. It doesn't ruin anything. I think it's perfect. Mother! Plus, I love her high heels. I love it, just like all those little things in the design.
Now, do we think that, like, what I loved about Covenant and parts of Prometheus is that it introduced a different mode of reproduction. I think that the queen might be a little bit overused, and what I loved about Covenant is the spores, and the fact that while there's different ways that the alien can kind of reproduce itself, it's not reliant upon this one mode of operation. And I feel like I wonder what the consensus is. I mean, I don't know if there's a real solid answer to this. Is the queen the only way the aliens reproduce, or is it just one way the alien reproduces?
I can see reproducing in multiple ways. I mean, the spores I thought were kind of 50-50. Then it turns the series into Resident Evil with all these different mutations. I thought that took more the mystery out than anything. Though I do like the idea of that they could reproduce differently. Like I said earlier, I could, like Mykal brought up before, I could see them morphing. I could see them bring the queen when needed. I mean, who else knows how other ways they have of reproducing? I mean, survival is their thing. I'm sure there's tons of different ways they do it.
Well, I think they tried to explain some of that stuff. Like, was it Alien 3? I can't remember if it was the cut scene or if they actually had a movie, the queen face hugger, which was incredible. That was just such a cool design, and that's like, that hasn't been used just in there. That's been used in the comics. Like, anytime you've seen most of the Alien comics, the queen or the queen face hugger, that's what they've all done the same one. That's what it looks like. It's, super large, twice as big as a normal one, but you never really saw it play out. But like Jamie said, and like Dave said, I think it's awesome to have all kinds of different ways, because that's the way you can kind of make the alien movies, as much as they're supposed to be 1, 2, 3, 4, you can make them all their own universes. Like, they can be their own, specific ways they do, besides the storyline with Ripley. I mean, hey, this planet, they evolved differently on this planet, and then they evolved differently on this planet. This one, there was no queen, so they had to figure out another way to do it. Okay, well, this one was spores, or this one was in the water, or this one, it can be so many ways. I think that's probably one of the coolest features. Is that
I love that.
You have no idea. I mean, and your mind can just go off and try to think of all the different ways that it could happen. And I think that in itself, as like we said, the queen fits her way and she fits in her own way, but at the same time, she's not needed to drive the series. Like, they can come up with different, ways.
Yeah, I just want to interject for a second. I kind of feel like there's sort of, well, I have two quick points. First one is, Michael's right about the queen facehugger, which I think is an awesome design motif that we see in the assembly cut, and we see in some other things in the EU. There's also, depending on which comic you're reading or which novel you're reading, there's different ways that are presented. Like, there's the idea that there's this royal jelly, or there's the idea that the Praetorians can metamorphose into a queen, and there's like, depending on which version you're reading, there's a couple of different explanations for it, all of which I think are kind of cool. So it's nice that it's not really definitively answered, like how a queen is actually created, because it's always kind of contradicted depending on which version of something you're reading at any given time. But I wanted to bring up something. I feel like there's sort of two conversations going on when it comes to the queen. I feel like there's the queen as presented in the canonical films, and then there's the queen that's presented elsewhere. And I feel like the two concepts are actually pretty divergent from each other, and I think that they're worth kind of unpacking on their own. My personal feelings, which I elucidated for 2 hours a couple weeks ago, so I'm not really going to get deeply into it, but I feel like I love the queen. I have a lot of love for the queen. I was struck by, when Jamie mentioned this, how I had never really considered that I had never personally found her frightening before. I thought that was kind of interesting. And it kind of got me thinking, that part of it is because I feel like something really at the heart of these films, at least, and talking about the film, the quadrilogy and the prequels, is the concept of otherness and the concept of alienness as something that is kind of thematically unimpeachably important to me. I feel like, we can talk about sort of like where they come from. We can talk about who's in the seat. We can talk about which direction you want to take things. But at the end of the day, I think Alien is at its most successful when it is as alien as possible and when it's as incomprehensible as possible. I think that that's not to say that you can't have answers to things that mirror things in nature. I don't think that necessarily weakens it. But I think if you get an answer, you have to do something that's hard to do, in my opinion. And of course, this is all my opinion. I think you have to present more mysteries that are opened when you answer a question, I think it's super hard to do that. And something that I brought up last time that I've really been thinking about is that the Queen, in a lot of ways, is kind of the ultimate answering device. And I don't mean that it's a dead end, because it's not. But it presents a really quick and simple solution to a question that's literally posed in the same film where she's introduced, which is who's laying the eggs, which is, at the end of the day, where do the actual organisms being encountered in that particular film installment come from, right? There's no question after that. Now, the questions are about where does she come from? What are her goals? Why is she there? What is the function of this hive within some greater architecture, right? There are other questions. But the reason why I answered yes on that poll that Conar put up, which I loved, thank you for doing that, Conar. The reason why I said I do want to see the Queen again is because I think if it's handled correctly as a device for introducing yet more alienness into things, I think it could be tremendously terrifying. I think doubling down, as Clara said, on the Lovecraftian aspects of her as the sort of ultimate behemoth of the unknown, as this sort of dark, sinister thing that has no explanation and no beginning and no end, is in sort of an indomitable. It's like you get to the mountains of madness and you find the Queen and she's staring back at you and you have no idea what the fuck she's doing. That to me is scary, right? So I my personal feelings on this are that if the Queen exists as an answer, it's not particularly powerful. But if it exists as a springboard to greater levels of alienness down the road, I think she's really interesting. And that's why I wanted to just propose that we also talk a little bit about representations of the Queen in the expanded universe, because as many of you have brought up, she's pretty much a part of almost every single storyline. And you can have, some of them are warring queens, and some of them, there are different types of queens. There's rogues, there's all these different things. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff we haven't even cracked the surface of yet. So we can get to that when we get to that. I know Shaun has something to say. I don't want to cut others off, but I just want to put that out there. If you have thoughts on her in the extended universe, please also bring that up.
It's a queen. She'll breed. You'll die.
You just brought up actually a fairly good point among all that is, like, what's her greater good? One thing I wouldn't mind seeing is, what would her hive look like not on Hadley's Hope? And one thing I would like to see explored in the future is, like, the Queen in its own environment, in its own inhabitant. I said that wrong, haven't I? Oh, gosh.
It's a New Zealand thing. Don't worry. It's fine.
I like just imagine how spooky it would be to see the Queen in her own environment and what a hive would look like somewhere else.
Just real quick, one thing with the expanded universe thing. I actually sent this to Clara a while ago. I was rereading the Alien 3 novelization, which is very good. And there was some cool little xenobiology type stuff where Ripley's talking to, I forget who, about the her little baby, and she goes, the one that got loose on my first ship, the Nostromo, was making preparations to reproduce itself, but it wasn't a queen either. At least some of them must be hermaphroditic, self-fertilizing, so that even one isolated individual can perpetuate the species. A warrior worker is capable of producing eggs, but only slowly, one at a time, until it can develop a queen to take over the job. That's how this one was able to start a queen inside me. At least that's the best scenario I could come up with. I'm no xenobiologist. Again, it's just some cool little thing from the book I thought was pretty interesting and a fun little theory too.
It is like the expanded universe. It's kind of hard because like I've said a million times, you walk a fine line because you're going to always have the people that are the alien fans, the true alien fans that, this is the established way that they've always brought it up. And then of course you have the Aliens versus Predator, and then, that's expanded and the way it goes. And, everybody knows how that fence goes one side or the other. But it is kind of cool. Like I know the original Alien versus Predator, they actually showed it was a comic issue 0 and it was actually the predators going to a planet to capture the queen, and like Shaun was saying, that's how it was there. Like it was their own planet that they were on, and they had their hive, which had the same interior that they show in Aliens. It was like that secreted resin, and there was the chamber, and then of course there was the drones, and there was everything else. So they show her in that way. Also in that same comic series, there is a ship that gets brought in to this planet to I guess pick up livestock. And of course, the way it always happens, they capture him, bring him back. There's a queen brought about, and she actually turns the inside of the ship the same way that they did on Hadley's Hope. She takes and completely covers over this and makes it their own world. And it's the same way where, she's there producing eggs. They bring stuff to her, and then it just multiplies and goes out of control. But like the AVP movies, I agree with everybody who said the same thing tonight. My biggest downfall with the AVP movies, and the very first one, was when you saw the Queen in Aliens. When you saw her, it was like just a heart-stopping moment. Like, what is this? And then in AVP, they brought her about, and you already knew it was coming. So I think Dave said there was no wow or anything to it, because it was the same thing just slapped on and made completely outrageous. So I think Aliens, the way she was used in Aliens was incredible at the time, and that's the way I feel, as though I love her in that way. But when you see her and everything else, it's like once you go out of the Aliens and that whole universe, it's like we said, it's a toy, and whoever's hands it in is decide how they want to do it, and I think that kills it. That's what really has everybody kind of wish-washing which way they want to see it.
What I do think, though, is that that moment when Ripley has Newt on her side and they're running, and all of a sudden they're in this chamber, this egg chamber, that is James Cameron's answer to Ridley Scott or Kane kind of climbing up into the pilot's chamber. That's our moment. That's our what is this? It's a very powerful, because you don't really know what you're seeing. I remember when I saw that the first time as a kid, and I remember seeing the egg, the ovipositor laying the egg, and I just remember thinking, what is this? Like, I didn't know about, maybe I knew about termites or whatever, but in the way that they portrayed it, I just didn't even know what I was seeing. I remember thinking, is that another, like, it's a worm? Like, what is happening? And I think it was really, really successful, because you see the Queen, or you see this thing, like almost like a spider in a web, kind of like suspended up. And you don't really know what you're looking at. You don't. You see these eggs around, and then it starts to make a little bit of sense. But I think it is a what the fuck moment. Completely, like it's a moment of wonder. And to your point, Clara, about the dumbing down, like, I don't know. Obviously, that term has been used. I've probably used it before, not so much with the Queen. I don't think that the Queen is dumb. I don't think anything. I think my contention a little bit has been making things understandable. Like, for instance, if I think about the space jockey, and this is, let's not talk about Prometheus. I just mean the space jockey as it was presented to us, thinking, what is this? What could this have been? And just kind of trying to find an answer to that and not coming up with anything. Whereas the Queen, like Patrick said a little bit, I was like, oh, okay, it's a Queen. It was a little bit more of an answer. And I wondered if it kind of took a little bit of the alien out of Alien. Not to say, as I went on before, as you guys have heard, I think it's dynamic. I think it's amazing. Obviously, everyone knows that I think Aliens is amazing. It's my least favorite of the trilogy, but I think it's amazing. I think the Queen is awesome. But I wondered if it just started...
I think what you're trying to say is that it's made it familiar.
Yes.
Yes. Whereas before, everything in Alien we saw was just that. It was just so alien. Whereas the Queen, the concept of what she is and what she stands for is very familiar. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
What I would say about that, Jamie, is it does make it familiar, but it's also a question of like, if you're going to continue to tell stories about these creatures and about this universe, you do have to shed light on a few things. You do want to keep some things a mystery, but you have to make some choices to reveal things. And the way I look at that is kind of like by the end of the first Alien film, you can't hide the alien in the dark anymore. I mean, you want to play with it atmospherically, but people know what the creature looks like. They kind of know what to expect. And so you need to find that next evolution, and Aliens did that really well. And again, I think Alien 3 did that really kind of cool with the Alien Queen, where, everyone knew the alien kind of, biological structure at that point. So what do they introduce? This concept that like, an alien might not kill you if you're carrying an alien queen inside you. And I just, again, think if we have creators who are taking that and letting that evolve, that could be really interesting. And one thing I would even suggest that, I don't personally love the direction of Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but I'm also someone as a fan who feels you have to kind of take everything. You can't ignore pieces. You kind of got to take what's there and see if you can make it work. And it would be kind of interesting if the alien queen represented some sort of natural evolution of the species that David is manipulating. Maybe it's an unintentional, evolution. And then you have this thing where a creator, much like, David as a creator, much like Wayland is losing control of his creation. His creation has its own intentions, its own evolution. So, I think there's things that could be played with.
Well, I just want to a very brief devil's advocacy moment. And this, the devil in this might be Jamie. I don't know if I'm the Jamie advocacy moment is.
Oh no, you didn't.
He's a little.
Oh yes, he does.
I would say before playing Alien Isolation, Bryant, I would 100% have agreed with everything that you're saying. I think having played Isolation and having seen familiar things done, where basically like the reason it works so well is that they just put the monster back in the shadows again. It's amazing how much more life there is in actually going small, I think. Which is not to say, and I say this as a huge Covenant guy, but I think there actually could be a lot of territory that is unplumbed in smaller stories where the stakes are a lot higher for a smaller amount of people in a smaller world. And, you sort of know the threat, but you just can't see it. I think that, there's something to be said for that too.
I would agree with that, Patrick. I guess what I would ask, and I can ask this to everyone, but specifically you, Alien Isolation for me works really well because it's a video game. I don't know it would work as a film because it would just be people going, well, this is just Alien over again. It's got a Ripley, it's got a setup that's very similar. But maybe I'm wrong, because we do see these characters continuing on in the comics. Alien Defiance and stuff is bringing Amanda Ripley back. But how do you all feel? Is that something that you think that there's more either an original way to kind of retell the Alien story or bring that character or creature back in the shadows?
I love. Go ahead, bud.
I think it could be done, but it has to be done as we used to discuss tons of times. It needs to be, and just like the Queen, it needs to be in the right hands. It needs to be someone who understands it and knows how to use it properly, not just throw it out there. I think it could be done because I watch horror movies all the time and I see a lot of familiar tropes redone, redesigned, little tweaks here, little tweaks there, just enough that it's own. And there's no reason why the most terrifying creature in cinema history cannot be brought back to some sort of suspense. I know we're at a time where it's, the aliens meme to death. It's in comics. It's in funny GIFs, cartoons. It's, I'm sure, watered down, or people don't even give a shit at this point, which is partly due to how long it's been out and the movie's inconsistencies. But there's no reason that, if done properly, it can't work. Hiding in the shadows, scaring the crap out of little kids again. This horror movie is made with seemingly a small budget that scared the piss out of people. There's no reason why an alien movie cannot anymore. None.
Well, I mean, Isolation pretty much showed you. I mean, it was, everybody knew it. Everybody knew Isolation from the trailers to the clips before it came out and everything. Everybody saw it and saw, oh, look, this is a single alien. And they promoted it that way. You know, a single alien that is going to be causing havoc just like it was in the original movie. And I'll tell you right now, and to you guys that haven't played the game, when you get towards the end of the game and some of the some things are discovered, it was fantastic because you did, like I think Shaun said it, you didn't have to see, you knew what was involved, but the way you saw it was just incredible because like you're like, oh man, this is getting deep. And like I said, it's kind of that thing where you already have a knowledge that you know what's coming up, and you still are like, you know, it still scares the crap out of you. You know, it was that was the thrill for me, was just seeing some of, you know, the ending, you know, stuff that was going on and really being brought into it. But yeah, I think it goes back to Dave said. It's pretty much that we've all been, you know, talking about and discussing. It has to be in the right hands. You know, you have to have somebody that can come up with an idea for the Queen in a way that is familiar to the fan base, but at the same time is going to bring about the same excitement and wow factor of the way it was in Aliens. I mean, that's the double-edged sword that every person that comes out or makes an Alien film from this point on is going to have trouble with.
Well, to a couple of things. As I watch, you know, Prometheus or Alien Covenant, even though everyone's kind of in a different place with those films, never once watching those films that I think, oh, I missed the Queen. What I was seeing was interesting enough and different enough and something I hadn't seen before, like the hammerpede and just the vases, the urns, and just the way that, you know, the black goo. And I know there's plenty of discussion about that trope. But then you have Covenant and you have the spores and you have the varying different ways that the alien can kind of reproduce itself. But then, you know, in Covenant you have the question of the eggs. Where did those eggs come from? Are they just large spores that look like eggs? Where did they come from? Were they grown? Whatever. And there's some questions there. But even during those questions, I wasn't like, oh, I hope I'll see a Queen. Of course, I know that in the ramp up to Covenant and the release, or there was questions, well, what did Shaw become? Did she become the first Queen? Was her body kind of used to kind of as an incubator of some sort? I mean, we don't really have an answer to that question. But the other point that I would like to make is I think we were discussing this earlier. Some of us were. Actually, me and Dave were discussing this. I think that what Alien needs isn't a rehash of what we've seen before, and I don't just mean the Queen. I mean, maybe she can be used in a way that is different and the way that makes her scary, because I'm also someone that I don't find her scary. She's just, her body size is too big. She can't really run very fast. She's just very obtuse. She's made to lay eggs, so she's not really a fighter or a warrior. But I just think that the Alien series on the whole, it just needs a fresh reset. And that doesn't include Ripley or Amanda Ripley or any of these things they're kind of in public consciousness all the time. And, you know, I know we have the Blomkamp debate and all of these things, but and actually Patrick, I attribute to bringing me around on this the most. We have to kind of like leave the past in the past and start off with a whole new slate.
Kill the past, let it die.
Yep.
See, this is what happens when I play Devil Jamie's Advocate, is I get...
Hey, I've been saying that for years. The Aliens just start with a fresh coat of paint, new characters, new setting, new everything, nothing, just start brand new, fresh, and then you could kind of bring a fresh face to all this.
Well, I think it's interesting. I feel like most people, when asked about Covenant, mention that a highlight for them was the backburster sequence, and I think that it might be worth investigating why that is. Like, I think in some ways it's because it's a return to basics, right? It's something like the reason why Alien is a cultural mainstay regardless of all of the other tropes that it used and Sigourney Weaver becoming this, action hero and all these other things, is the chestburster sequence when Kane gives birth. I think that's the reason why it's a cultural touchstone. And I think that the backburster sequence gave us that same experience of wondering what the fuck was happening and having this kind of mortifying, gory reveal, but it was done in a way that made us even more confused. So it was something that kind of triggered that same part of our mind that gets us afraid of the unknown, but it did it in a way that we were familiar with and also overwhelmed by. And I think that's why it sticks out so well, because I was so afraid of that. So I don't know. It was neither here nor there, but
you're right. It was familiar but different. It was the same, but it wasn't. There was the perfect blend of stuff we know and stuff we don't.
I've got a question for everyone who is saying that we should forget the past and kind of have a fresh reset on it, seeing as we're talking about maybe not using the Queen or how we would feel if the Queen wasn't used. I want to ask those same people. I know Jaime's one, but he's just popped away. But anyone else who's going along with the leave the past in the past, what are your feelings about the series continuing to use the chestburster and the facehugger? Because now we've got different vices of the alien coming about, whether it be spores or black goo or some kind of David creation or what have you. It's kind of deemed that the facehugger and the chestburster almost unnecessary, much like the Queen. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it.
I have no problem bringing those back. I think those are some of the elements that need the fresh coat of paint, because the spores, to me, like I said, it just turns the series into Resident Evil. It's like, all right, the spore is going to go into this and then this. I mean, it's almost like it just takes. I don't think it adds anything that could really be mysterious. I think even just the general basics, maybe with some sort of twist that I'm not smart enough to think of, could work. Just all that stuff redone and reintroduced in just a different manner. But I think all the general tropes, and like Patrick was just saying with the backburster, it was something we've seen a cajillion times, but it was done properly. And it's one of hell, for all that movie's faults, that's one of the best movies and one of the best scenes in all the Alien movies. Between the score that's there and the way it's done, it's awesome. And there's no reason that type of thing can't be brought back to the rest of the franchise. The Queen, the characters, the facehugger, chestburster, you name it. I think all that stuff could work.
I don't time for. Yeah, good.
Go.
I don't care if they can use the facehugger for as long as they want, because to me that's still one of the coolest, creepiest things around.
Yeah, it's creepy.
As long as they don't shoot them and fly them through the air in slow-mo, because that has been killed. And Aliens vs. Predator, it was the worst on that. And I think they did it, in Covenant too, where they had it literally just about fly through the air. Like, I like the whole, the pop out on Kane will forever be one of the greatest scenes. I mean, that scene was so quick and so savage. It was just such a neat thing. But I mean, to get to your point, I think the chestburster, you don't have to do the chestburster. I mean, literally, you could have it come out someone's elbow for all I care. If it's something different, a different way it's coming out, the one that came out of the guy's out of his mouth, through his throat, that it in itself was just it gives you that just an uneasy feeling. But I mean, like I said, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that was it Ridley Scott was not a fan of the whole Queen concept. So my thing is he going to, just saying if he comes up with if there's another movie now, does he go in a separate direction? Or why bring it in and introduce it at all? I mean, there's a ton of areas to go, but, I just find it funny that, for something that wasn't liked, I believe, that you in Covenant, you have the whole Queen, and you start this ball rolling in everybody's head that is Shaw going to turn into the Queen? Was she almost the Queen? What's he going to do with Daniels? Is she going to become a Queen? How's she going to? So like for not really liking that whole scenario to push it again and have people questioning, but then again, he could pretty much go in any direction he wants, and it's still going to be something hopefully we've never seen before.
But to that point, the only people who were asking those questions were the fans. I don't think Ridley Scott had any intention of reintroducing a Queen. I think it was pretty obvious in Covenant that Ridley Scott was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing something different. And I know that he's gone on record, and people who've worked with him have gone on record to say that Ridley Scott doesn't like to repeat himself.
Correct.
That's controversial. Actually, I think he does like to repeat himself.
Yeah. Well, but he also never made a Queen before.
No, he hasn't. But it's also something he didn't come up with, and I don't know if that is going to. I don't know if he would do that. But I think part of maybe some of the not groans, but some of the I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. A little bit maybe where people, maybe myself, are tired of it is, not that so much like, oh, I'm tired of aliens or I'm tired of Alien or whatever. It's more of a lot of times in groups, it's Marines, the Queen, hoorah, and that's kind of, that's the message all the time is Marines and the Queen, Marines and the Queen. And that gets a little bit boring, to be honest with you. I think, Alien is best when it's Alien, and I think again, like what you're saying, Patrick, about the backburster. I remember I will never forget leaving the theater that night. We've talked about this before. Calling Dave or texting Dave, and we were talking about that scene, and I remember being completely disturbed by that scene, unlike I had ever been in a movie. Like I felt almost sick to my stomach, and that doesn't happen to me in a film. And that scene, the backburster, even though it was a variation on a theme that we've seen, it was done in such a way that it felt brand new. And I think if we see the Queen again, she's got to feel new. And I don't mean the design. I just mean she's got to be in the shadows. I mean, maybe someone's in in some type of structure, and she's there, and they don't hear it, and they run into her. I mean, that would be pretty scary. I think that the alien, the face huggers, the eggs, all of it is scary. But I think the problem is some of these directors, whether it's the AVP directors, or it's obviously with Resurrection, or maybe even a little bit in Covenant, they feel like tropes. They don't feel like they're needed. And when you turn these things into tropes, that's when they start feeling like, oh, okay, we're seeing this, we're seeing that. It's got to feel important. It's got to feel necessary. And Patrick and I were having a discussion about yet another entry into this series, but we were talking about the idea of all characters mattering. And I talked about that with you as well, Dave, that all characters have to matter. And those characters also include the Queen, the facehugger, and the egg. Those are characters in a film. They're not just tropes. And I think maybe I tire of them because they feel like tropes now. They don't feel like characters.
Well, it'll be really easy to prisoners. It'll be really easy to use the Queen in a different way than what we've seen, because in Alien Resurrection, we've spoke about this. She was pretty much a plot device to give us the newborn, which was god awful. And in Aliens, we only really saw her in the hive, and that was done brilliantly. And then we saw her come up against, she was kind of hunting Newt on the Sulaco, and then having the mother battle with the power loader, with Ripley and the power loader, sorry. So something you can do just original is see what she would do against a human one-on-one. Like, how would you kill a Queen if you can't blow it out of an airlock? What can you do to a Queen if you don't have a power loader to kind of match it? Like, there's so many unexplored things you can do with the Queen.
I think that in both Prometheus and Alien Covenant, they're onto a good thing. They've taken what you say, these tropes that we're so familiar with, and kind of turned them on their heads. So all of our expectations, like at least with Leadwood, the conventional moviegoer would be thinking oh, it's going to come out the front of him. You know, we've seen this before. We've seen the guy lie down on the med table. It's all going to be the same thing again. But it wasn't. It was through his back. And that was the same with the mouth burster as well, which doesn't really get enough credit, which is totally disgusting.
Oh, that's sick. It is. No one talks about that. That is disgusting.
It disturbs me.
I feel like if that moment were lit better, people would talk a lot more about it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem.
What made that worse is that his partner was right there watching it. Like,
yeah, exactly. To be able to like see that and not being able to control what's happening. Even the description in the book, Alan Dean Foster, just describing the whole moment. You know, saying that his maxilla was like extending to the point of where his jaw just snapped and dropped open, and then like the mouth burst just comes out. Yeah, I just love that. And if they could do that with the Queen, like make it so different enough so it's interesting, but same enough so the Queen gets the sort of respect and reverence it deserves. I would love to see, you know, Ridley Scott's or Blomkamp's or whoever takes the helm of the franchise next to do the Queen justice. I would love to see that. And I know you guys don't like AVP, but I really love the presentation of the Queen in that. I thought it was really cool. She's and I really want to buy the the Revoltech AVP Queen, because I think she's beautiful. So yeah, I think that if whoever takes over, they just can't reheat and do exactly the same as what we've seen before. It definitely has to be something that's different, and the encounter has to be different. The power dynamics have to be different. It can't be like a Ripley type figure in a power loader again, I don't think. Like, you know, we saw that sort of kind of battle with Daniels and the Lander battling the Xenomorph in Covenant, and people didn't like it because it was too much like the power loader. So I think it has to be like, you know, maybe a child or a man or something else against the Queen with a different type of weapon that is not on equal or on par, and it can kind of surprise us. Or even in Alien: The Cold Forge, even though there wasn't a Queen in there, the power loader was used, and I think it was used effectively, and it was used differently, and it was used in an interesting way that made it it made it fun for fans of the Alien franchise to read, because it had such familiarity, but at the same time it was different enough that we didn't know what was going to happen, and I think that's what we need in the next movie.
Such a good book.
Oh, see,
so good.
The problem is too, and like I said, I know I'm the dark horse on this because they're, you know, I enjoy them, but you know, like look at the AVP movies. My reasoning for those movies shelling and just being absolutely awful is all the directors tried to do was fit as many Easter eggs and nods to the franchises that they could, that they showed nothing different. You know, you saw it over. If you the first AVP movie, besides being in Antarctica, literally copied the first comic where they're on Ryushi. That it literally copied it, except it was in the snow. And that's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. Is there's no originality. So, you know, it's just like Clara said. Yeah, if you handle the Queen correctly, you have so many avenues of which way you can travel, but you have to do it the correct way and show her the correct way.
Yeah, it's about respect.
It's funny, the Queen in Ryushi on the comics has an interesting, it's been a long time since I've read those, but I remember that there's like these dueling factions of predators, and the Queen is basically brought in as like a weapon to mind control the xenomorphs that have been enslaved by like the antagonistic predator clan.
You're thinking of Third World War.
Oh, is that what? Okay.
Yeah,
in whichever storyline that was.
Yep.
I like the way that they used her in that as sort of as like an interesting, as showing a different side of her power with the sort of her communication abilities. But the problem again there is that once we know that she's able to communicate with the drones, which we do, obviously, having seen Aliens, that removes again another layer of mystery, because they literally have a language. Like we can intuit how they can communicate, because she can hiss and they can understand things. I really feel like bringing mystery back is just going to be helpful in general. Going back to something about 45 minutes ago briefly, Bryant, that was a really good point about how Isolation might not have been well received as a film because of its familiarity, whereas because it's experiential, because it's a game that we can, kind of inhabit in our own time and bring our own objective reality to, it has a different reception. Something that I find really, I think you're actually right about that. Something that I find really fascinating is that we are always caught in this tug of war with these films between what's familiar or like what's too familiar and what's not familiar enough, right? And I think that that's something that every fandom deals with. I think you see that really clearly with Star Wars fandom. I think you see it with anything. Whenever you revisit old territory, you're going to be inevitably running into these situations where some people feel like it's too precious and some people feel like it's completely disregarding the past. So I guess what I would say is it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You can it's a value call that you as the director make. You either double down on tradition or you abandon it, or you do something in the middle. But as long as what you're doing has some sort of a cohesiveness to it, I think with Isolation, part of why it works, other than the fact that it is a video game, so that has its own sort of separate aspect, I think it's just the attention to detail. Like I remember Clara and I talked quite a bit about this a couple episodes back about the cassette futurism and like the idea that, when you activate things in the game, it sounds and it feels very familiar like it does in the film. And it's like a constant reinforcement loop with the film that we love. And I think that because like they never lose sight of that. Like there's no huge anachronism in the middle of the film that just blows it into this weird dream sequence or something. Like it's like it is decided early on that Isolation is a fundamentally familiar experience done extraordinarily well, and that is the tone for the whole film. I think when these work really well, like Aliens is a great example of a movie like this, it starts off with a very different tone. It starts off saying, I am not what you're used to. You better just appreciate me for what I am. And then it does it so brilliantly well that you can't help but appreciate it, even if you don't even like the movie. It's just a brilliant film, So I think just like anything, if you're going to have a queen in a movie, decide on whether or not it's alien, and then just go as far in that direction as you can. And at the end of the day, as we've all been saying this entire episode, it comes down to the personnel you have on board. And if you don't have somebody who's capable of steering that vision, no matter what choice you make, it's not going to go anywhere.
I totally agree with that, Patrick. And just so everyone's clear, I'm totally on the Alien Isolation train. I fought against that, and once I played that, played the game, it totally won me over with just the obvious love put into that. That's a unique experience, and it's terrifying. You're like stepping into the film. But it's exactly what you're saying. The one aspect that I, as a fan, constantly struggle with Isolation is it feels like the universe is smaller because Amanda Ripley somehow also got involved with the xenomorphs. They've won me over. I want to see where they go with that story. But I think that maybe, the films themselves need exactly what you're saying. We almost need both the creators and the fans to stop chasing the high of Aliens. It was great. There's a lot we can take from it, but you're right. These things need original characters. We need to see something different. We need to stop seeing colonists every time. We need to not go back to Marines. We need to not go back to towing vessels. We need to maybe even step away from what we've already seen of androids. Like, we need someone to come in with a new idea. And that could even be something like, Alien 3 gave us a prison alien movie. We could have like a heist alien movie. We could have so many different variations in the right hands, and they do need to. It needs to feel even more than Star Wars, I think, which can kind of lean on its legacy because it's sort of about families and legacies. Alien has some of that, but we need new stories. We need new characters and new vision to a degree.
And I think you also need, really, and I think this goes for any character in any film, there just, again, has
Alex
to be...
Garland.
It has to, well, yeah, but there has to be a level of respect.
Definitely Alex Garland.
If you're gonna make an alien film, you need to include whatever component of the alien mythology in it because you love it, not because you feel obliged to, not because the studio is telling you to. And if you don't feel like you want to do it because the studio is telling you to, then walk away from it. And I think, again, it's just about respect. It's about respecting the material that you have. And I don't know, even in I don't know how much David Fincher, even as much as I love Alien 3, how interested he was in alien lore, or how, and it was kind of clear sometimes maybe he wasn't worried, he wasn't too concerned about, the effects of the alien in Alien 3 because it was shitty. I just think that there needs to be someone who is just biting at the bit to tell a story.
Yep.
And to say, this is the story I want to tell. This is what I've loved. And, almost like who Ridley Scott was in the late 70s before they gave him this film. Or
you're not going back on the Neil Blomkamp train, are you? Is this where
no,
this is
I mean,
going?
that ship has sailed. Sigourney Weaver's just about turned 70 in a year. That ship has sailed. I think as much as I would love to see that, it's over. It's done. I think that we have to kind of, hopefully, I don't know what Fox has in store, but I feel like all of it has just been divisive. And there's been this contention, and I think some of the contention that happened with Ridley Scott and Neil Blomkamp and all those things, that studio contention jumped to the fan base. And I think I
think you're right. There was a transference there, I think.
Yeah, and I think the best thing to do is just to kind of move on. And hopefully Fox has got got that message loud and clear. I guess it's to find out. We'll find out.
Now, let me just throw a thought, and this is just really quick, and this is again kind of beside the point. But I've been saying Alex Garland a lot and getting a lot of thumbs up from people because we all love his work. Well, I know some of you don't in here, but you're crazy.
Clara does not like Annihilation.
But that's not the point. But
that movie is trash.
Listen. Wait, Clara. If you need a cure for insomnia, Annihilation is fantastic.
Yeah, it's amazing. Clara's crazy.
The thing of that movie's The Bear.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing. So
Natalie Portman sucks.
Neil Blomkamp has made this like mini career of complaining and releasing things about this, and I think that is.
I don't think he's been complaining. I think he's just releasing I don't think he's complaining at all
about it, and he is. He's bitter about it. I don't blame him for it.
Obviously, he had his movie taken away from him by a bitter old man. What do you expect?
Yeah, like I get it.
Did I open a can of worms or something here?
Well,
the worms are always crawling around. Let's go.
Any interview you hear him do, and I say this as somebody who's read 2 of his novels, somebody who's been a big fan of his work for since 28 Days Later. I think you every single time he talks, he brings up Alien as being the foundational film for him. Like that was what got him interested in the science fiction of ideas. He talks about Alien all the fucking time, and he never complains about it. He never says like, well, why am I not making this? He never makes these backroom deals by getting Sigourney Weaver to executive produce. He just writes from a place of love for Alien. And that comes to the point where he finally got a chance to make a pseudo Alien movie in Sunshine, which is a very uneven film. I think it's a brilliant film, but it's a very uneven one. And I think you can see really clearly in the stupidest part of the movie, which is the pinbacker sequence, which I won't get deeply into because it's a huge spoiler territory for people. But I think that even though that is the dumbest part of the movie in terms of the philosophical reality of what was going on, it is so scary. It is something that you're thinking, this is ridiculous, and I am horrified by what I'm watching. And the idea of him being able to, he was clearly trying to do an alien project with that. I think the idea of getting him able to steer the mythology and to take the reins and to do whatever the fuck he wants to do with his brilliant artistic mind, just excites me to no end. I really think he's the best.
Well, he's completely qualified. He's completely qualified.
More than artistic for an alien movie.
That's my little editorial comment.
I mean, really, I think the most difficult thing with an alien film is the script. I think maybe all of us could probably agree on that. Getting a script right. I think there's so much meddling. There has been so much meddling in these stories and input that by the time they shoot these films,
since Alien 3.
Yeah, by the time they shoot these films, even though I would say Prometheus, of the films we've received since Alien 3, since 92, Prometheus is probably the most focused. The script is shitty, but at least it knows what it is. You know,
Correct.
They've got a goal. They're on a mission.
Yep.
They're on a journey. Whereas these other films are like, oh, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Maybe, you know.
I love Covenant, but it has more of identity crisis than some girls I've dated. I mean, it isn't what it is.
You've been in my life so long. I can't remember anything else.
And one last thing on Garland, the bear sequence that everybody brings up from Annihilation as being clearly one of the best moments of it, is in my opinion a perfect example of introducing Alien into a non-alien environment, because there are layers of unknowability within that sequence, right? Between the noises that the bear makes, which I won't get into because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, between the polygeometric face shapes and the morphing skulls and all this shit, and you're looking at this thing and you're recognizing it as something you can recognize, just like when you look at the Queen, you can recognize it as a member of a hive hierarchy. You can recognize her as being the central, progenitor of this thing. When you look at the bear, you see a predator, right? But then you look more at this bear and you listen to this bear, and it makes less sense. And the less sense it makes, the more terrifying it becomes, to the point where it becomes something that everybody talks about as one of the great horror moments of the year in a non-horror movie. I think that's part of why he's qualified. Okay, I'm done with Alex Garland, but he's fucking great.
I barely made
the rest
it
of
through
the
that
movie. Attention's nonsense.
Well,
okay, I've got a couple points.
Yes, Connor.
So, going back to Alien Isolation, because we will never shut up about it on this podcast, one of the best lessons I think I took from it was not the alien itself, it's how the alien is used as a catalyst to drive the characters and their story. Because I think you'll all agree, the most terrifying part about Isolation is the whole run-up to before you actually see the alien, because you're being put in this environment that's complete and utter chaos. And it displays the worst parts about humanity, in my opinion, where you see all these survivors struggling just for the bare minimum of supplies. You'll see them killing each other for supplies. I could even imagine seeing people throw other people towards the alien just to avoid it. But I think what's most important, we don't need to toss canon or what's been established about the life cycle to the wind and give it a new facelift. It's how these creatures are used not just for eye candy, but to push the characters and their arcs in these stories in more diverse and interesting ways that we've not seen before. Because you could give us some sort of new alien or whatever, but if it's just the same story setup, it's not going to be interesting. We're just going to get bored of it and complain about it. Just much like Covenant, it did give us new things in the life cycle, but it followed a lot of tropes.
Picking up on what you're saying, like a case in point is a film that Patrick loves and a lot of people love is Into the Spider-Verse, which is another iteration of the Spider-Man lore, and it's amazing, and it feels, I don't love it as much as like Patrick loves it, but I will be a witness to say that it is an amazing film, and it's very much of what we see in it are things that we've seen before in a way I've never seen it done before. So I think
Halloween also. Sorry.
Halloween, yeah, I haven't seen that yet.
Yes.
The new one.
Yes.
Well, I just think it is possible. I mean, I see versions of the alien and the Queen all the time, and I'm just like, the images are scary to me. The alien continues to be frightening. Just even the different kind of variations in design, or all the fan variations. I mean, the amazing concept designs of the alien. It's a fucking scary beast. And it's not about, it's really about the cook. It's not about the ingredients or the recipe, It's about the cook.
Well said.
Look, those two specimens are worth millions to the bioweapons division, right? Now, if you're smart, we can both come out of as heroes, and we will be set up for life.
Can I ask a question for the group? Well, initially I wanted to challenge everybody to do the Queen's breathing noises, but I think that would get too fucked up too quickly. But if you feel like it, whip that out at some point. I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite representations of the Queen outside of films? Because we've now had 2 episodes talking about her in the movies. What are some of your favorite interactions with her in expanded universe things?
Earth War trilogy with the cult. I love how she can basically reach into your mind and alter your dreams. So not only when the aliens are around, they're invading your body, they're also invading your very psyche, which is fucked up beyond all compare.
Yeah, I love the dream stuff as well. I think that's really fascinating. And it's an interesting parallel because in the Aliens, the first run of the Aliens Dark Horse comics, when we see the pilot, he also invades dreams. Remember? It's kind of a cool little.
I never liked his involvement in those original comics. I don't know why. It didn't seem right to me.
No, I fucking think he's ridiculous. But and it's funny because the same people that complain about the engineers are the same people who complain that we lost the pilot race. And also, in my opinion and in my experience, a lot of the time, the same people who say that they don't like the prequels because they're like abandoning what they've assumed the engineers to be based on the Dark Horse comics. And I'm like, so you really want that character to be the basis of the mythology?
Fishbowl helmet.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
some
think
of those iterations look really silly.
Well, they do look silly. I don't think that people want that. They're not happy. I love the engineers.
I can name names. I'm not going to.
I love the engineers, but I still don't think that they're the creature that was in the ship in the derelict. Not by a long shot.
No.
Well, fair enough.
I was a big fan of the Red Queen.
Yeah.
Genocide.
The Red King she was great.
Everyone was
Love
badass.
Genocide.
Well, and that's like so cinematic. That's made for film. It's sort of shocking that they haven't gone like, hey, let's at least have an alien fight an alien at some point. A queen fight a queen, It seems like something they would have shoved into the back of an AVP movie by this point.
Well, if they were that smart, we'd have good AVP movies. So,
one thing I wanted to add was I agree that one of the most fascinating aspects is the nightmare stuff with the queen and some of the first two iterations. I guess the two books of the Dark Horse comics, and the other aspect was how people started worshiping the queen aliens and sort of kidnapping other people and taking them into the hives and talking to them. I mean, that would be a really cool evolution for if they had done that after Alien 3 or Alien 4, where you go oh, I thought I was afraid of the queen alien, or I thought it wasn't scary. Well, now if it has this control over people around me, how terrifying is that?
Well, and I think there's the Lovecraft thing again. How cool would that be, right? That it could be exerting some sort of dream state control over people and forcing them to worship her, and that this religion comes about. And I think that's very scary.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just her. I guess the queen model or the version itself. It's kind of hard because nothing really goes too far. I guess off of that look. The look always stays the same. Which is good because, like I said, it's supposed to have that larger than life, scary, and each comic itself they've kind of done their own version of something. We have the Royal Jelly, and we we were just talking about in AVP Third World War. She has and I don't think was it I thought it was like a pheromone. Some kind of a signature that she reads off that she controls one group another and turns them on. It's just there's so much stuff. I mean, it's like the aliens themselves. I mean, I always was under the impression that whatever the face hugger, whatever impregnated it took the form of. I mean, that's something I'd like to see. Something done. Well, what if a face hugger attached to a rhino? What if it attached to a dog? What if it, you get in Alien 3, of course you had the runner and stuff like that. But I think that in its own self, that's an avenue that could just expand like crazy, and not get campy. I don't mean for it to be like, oh, look, it's on an elephant, so now it's the size of an elephant. But, there's been comics. Yeah, really. I mean, there's been comics that they take the form of they take the form of what's been on it. And it's just I just think that's a cool concept. I mean, you could go forever and ever and ever. There's what is it? Like Labyrinth. That was another one of the great comics. And then even I'm trying to think of the other one where they sent a person in a robot suit, and then they actually had a character that got captured just to go to the queen. It's just leaving my mind right now, but
Rogue?
there's was it Rogue? Oh no, Rogue was Rogue. I think was
Rogue's where they create one.
King. Yeah, they create one.
Yeah.
But I can't think of what it was. It was the one, like I said, it was the one where they actually had a guy in a robot suit that would go down and bring back the other character. And
ATACs.
Yeah. They're just
was it Outbreak?
So I mean, there's so many ways you can go with that and make it new.
Well, I thought that would be my next question then for the group would be, how do we see the Queen again, and how do we see her in a way that we haven't seen her before? And of course, not using her as just an egg depository or just this device. Again, to go back to Aliens, James Cameron really had a lot of respect for her. He had a respect for the design. Just as a character in the film, there was a lot of respect given to her, and I think that respect left with Resurrection and AVP, and then certainly in AVP Requiem. I don't even know if I could call that a queen. I don't even know what the fuck that was. It was just
a bastardization.
It was just awful.
Yes.
It was awful. It was a true dumbing down of the queen. Whereas I think that this character deserves respect. But I'm curious how she could be presented again and make her interesting, or does it even need that much thought? I mean, really, can we just place her in a room, quietly, or a big room?
I would use one of the theory. You mess with any of the theories we came up with show her creation or one way. Like you could do something with, Weyland 10 studying them, and you see how the queen comes about. You could do all sorts of twisted ways you could do that. I think that would be interesting, showing her how the alien species actually decides they need the queen itself. I think that could be interesting. That'd be something different instead of just placing her somewhere.
I'm actually writing that as we speak.
I would actually go a little bit of a different direction there. Instead of Weyland Yutani studying her, because that would probably mean that they'll need to capture her, which I'm never a fan of. Alien Resurrection. One thing I wouldn't mind doing is maybe have a story where someone's encountered the aliens before. And I think this is very similar to one of the books or one of the comics. And you don't really need to show the queen that often. Just like little 3 to 5 second clips of her maybe moving her head or whatever, and then a character waking up from a nightmare going, it's calling me, we need to go and finish this off, we need to go back and end the species, and have kind of just play on that with the queen being able to what's the word, the English language has disappeared from me all of a sudden, but like where it can communicate to people. That's the one. Thank you very much. And just let them know that I'm going to get you. And really just scare the bejeebers out of people.
Darren Aronofsky type like dream sequences that are just terrifying would be fantastic.
Precisely. Yeah, and that way you don't need to expose the queen on screen that much. You can literally just have her on for a few seconds at a time, maybe moving her head, the odd hiss here or there, that kind of thing. I think that would probably be one good way to go about it anyway.
That'd be awesome. Almost like in upside down sequences in Stranger Things, but like in an alien context where you're just sort of trapped in a dream.
Yeah,
super
that
cool.
would be, yeah.
One great scene with aliens I remember, I'll never forget this, is when they're, of course, all in the med lab and all this stuff's going on, and they're like, they're here, they're in the room, they're like, you're not reading it right and everything, and then, of course, you have Hicks, who goes up into the ceiling and he sees them. And that scene, it's like terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying, and it's the idea that something's here, and we know it is, but we don't know where it is. And I think the Queen used that way. She hasn't been used that way. Where she's not just a threat like a warrior or a drone. She's the boss. She kind of speaks to them. She's the weapon of mass destruction, and to kind of have her hidden, but have people kind of feel like something's here with us, but we don't know where it is. That to me is scary.
I think someone touched on earlier. I'm not sure who, and I apologize, but someone was saying about how it'd be neat to see her in her element. I think that's kind of a cool concept, because if you think about it, every time we've ever seen the Queen, either she has been brought to a planet, or she's on a planet, or already involved in somebody. But it would be cool to see some kind of a concept. I think the Alien Prometheus Predator comic book kind of touched on it, where it was kind of like sort of their planet, and we were stranded there.
Like Xenomorph Prime, right?
Yeah, that would be kind of cool. Like to see them where it's not that they're, we get stuck where they are, instead of, them coming some way and end up, setting up shop, I guess you'd say, here. But that'd be kind of cool to see, sort of a, like a Lost in Space kind of crashed, don't know where you are, nothing is familiar, and then all of a sudden it gets even worse. One of those kind of scenarios.
It could be actually you do that, and then it can sense when there's people coming into her territory, and that's when she starts the telepathy. I don't know if I'm getting that word right. Because they're kind of invading her environment, so that's when she's like, "You're gonna get it. You're gonna pay." And the people who are going near it, that's when they start freaking out. I think that awesome. could work really well.
Drooling in the environment painted by Giger right now. Oh, it'd be so fucking glorious.
That would be awesome.
I'm thinking. I'm the reason why I'm not jumping in too is for one thing because I want to hear what you have to say, but also because I'm like distracted by this like image that's playing out in my head right now of like what I would like to see, and I think what I want is for Ridley Scott to make his third prequel, and I want it to be the apotheosis of what he has been going towards this whole time, like this completely bizarre. I think he does, though, Jamie. I really think he does. I think he has a story that he's trying to tell. I think it's somewhat encumbered by other constraints and by expectations and by revenue and things like that. But I think he does know what he's trying to do.
I have a theory about this.
Okay, well, let me just finish my image.
Yeah.
What I would love to see is a completely quasi-religious, terrifying, grand guignol, gothic philosophical horror film that basically ends almost with like the ultimate body horror on the ship that is then brought back to, well, and this is obviously like from the leaked script, something that they're working on, but then brought back to sort of wreak havoc on the engineers who were, mounting an insurrection. And then I would love for there to be some sort of a transference that happens, like when he cracks the code, almost like in Blade Runner 2049, when replicants are able to reproduce, that like in this, that two things happen. One is that David is able to dream coherently because he talks about dreaming a lot in the film. So like we enter a dream that he had, and in that dream, we see the birth of the Queen Mother, who has been brought up. I think she was in Genocide and she was in Earth Wars, but it's this apocryphal aliens character of sort of the ultimate queen who exerts really profound dream control over casts of aliens across the galaxy. And I think in this dream state, she is revealed to him. And in her being revealed, the power of that moment is enough to turn the engineers who are surviving against themselves, where they bow down to this birth of a greater intellect and the birth of the ultimate evolution of what they were trying to do in the first place with their exploration of the universe. And that they basically commit self-genocide. David fades away into a dream state forever, and the aliens reign supreme. I think that would be like a really and to make it really fucking gory and scary and no survivors, the closest thing to a survivor being the Queen Mother and David, who's trapped in a dream somewhere floating in the galaxies, in the cosmos. I think that'd be a really fascinating way to go.
That's awesome.
I don't know if any of that makes sense.
That'd be fun.
In my head,
I got you.
It's really vivid,
Yeah.
but
I mean, obviously not on that level, but that's the same type of idea. I think most of us wonderfully sick fucks have thought of when just the thought of him messing and creating and tweaking these poor souls he has to play with. You could really have a lot of fun with it. But who knows if we'd even get that, if Fox would approve it, who knows? But it's a hell of an idea, and I'd sign up for that.
And just to be so scared, and just to be sitting there in a movie that's fucking 3 hours long, and it's just so weird and it's scary, and I'm just sitting there 6 hours long. But like, in my like heart, I would love for this to be the last film that he makes. Like, you know, he waits 4 years and he finally makes this movie, and it's just, he puts everything he has into it, and it's just wild. And half of fandom hates it, and half of fandom loves it.
Oh, we really need that, yeah.
Well, because you know what? Like, I think that's where this is going, and I think after that we reset things and we figure out what our shared language is. But I think, like, if we're going to be honest, I think we have to be honest. I think we have to be honest with the art that we create, and I think we have to be honest with what we're trying to say. And I think that Ridley Scott is trying to say something, and that it's being encumbered by a lot of things that are partly his own fault. But I think it would be fascinating to see what this guy, who has given us a lot of things that mean a lot to us in our lifetimes, to give him basically free reign to make the most fucked up thing that he can make, and then to leave and to be done, and then to go back and figure out where to go next.
If he could do that with a script that cared about everything, with a script that had intelligent everything.
A script he didn't write.
Yeah, a script he didn't write.
Garland.
Something where, you know, we end up caring about these characters the way we care about, you know, all the characters in the first two, you know, or even the way we care about maybe Ferris or Shaw. That would be great. I just don't. Ideas aren't enough. Those ideas aren't enough to carry a film.
I want to see every single colonist egg morphed. That's my plan. I want every single one of them, and then it's gonna be like, boom. There's where all the eggs came from. We're good. See y'all later. I'll talk to you later and move on. Hand over the keys.
Same time, just go kill me.
Yeah. Great.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see kind of if we do see the Queen again, if they do have an Alien series, you know, like it's set within the world of aliens, you know, and it takes place with Marines. If they introduce a Queen, how that's going to shape out. It's going to be interesting to see. And I think that there's a lot more to talk about. And if it does happen and we see the Queen, obviously we'll be talking about it more. But I think we should probably wrap up, but I want to kind of take this last maybe 10-15 minutes and kind of talk about a shit show, which is The Predator, but more specifically.
Oh no! Here's the elephant in the room. There it is.
But not the movie. We're not going to talk about the movie. I just
Why the fuck are we talking about this?
No, I just want to talk about the news that
enjoyable before.
The news that dropped about Ripley or Newt waking up at the end of Predator, and what the fuck those people were thinking.
The whole thing is just
they don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the point now where I'm so mad, and these stupid feeds keep coming out, and these stupid pictures about, oh, we were going to do this ending, and we were going to do this ending, and oh, look, this one said Ripley, and oh, guess what, this one was Newt. And I think to myself, first of all, if you did that, you make absolutely no sense in this whole Predator movie made. That there would be no reason to do any of that, although there was no reason for a lot of things they did. But I think the whole reason they're doing this, it's just to sell DVDs. You know, that's my only thing I can think of is just to get people to go out and be like, did you hear about this? Well, now I got to go get the movie so I can watch it.
I think you're right. It's not a coincidence that this is all coming out, you know, within a month of the DVD going out.
Oh yeah, they're trying to get people to go, whoa, I got to buy this. What else did they do? Yeah.
But the thing is, they spent money on props and to film it. So what?
Yeah.
I can't, and I know you guys, I know a lot of you guys, like I know Dave and Patrick, I know you guys are really into the comics, I know some of the other guys are, but it's so bad. Like, this whole combination is so bad. The last time anything was this bad is, and you guys remember Alien versus Predator versus Terminator? When they had Ripley in the bar? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness! That, like, when I saw those pictures,
This is worse. This is worse.
This
doesn't even make. I mean, you know what makes this worse is I think that all of us would agree. There's literally no. The problem with this is a decision that says we filmmakers, we storytellers, did not care enough to come up with a reason why this could happen. We don't explain why time travel. We don't explain why they would be predator killers. We just want you to go, oh my God, at the end of the movie. We don't care what it is. We literally do not care what it is. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
All that it is a slap to the audience intelligence by doing that.
Oh,
it's like here,
fully,
this is a throwback, something you like. Bang.
It's probably one of the most insulting things that I've seen. You know, at least with the other films, they were just trying to do. It's like, I don't even.
It's a drop kick to the intelligence.
Totally, it's a total drop kick.
That's a fucking drop kick.
This movie,
Fuck me in the face with an aardvark. That idea was terrible.
He was the best part of that movie.
This Predator movie is the equal to Alien Resurrection in my book.
No,
and I will say this.
Oh, it's way worse.
Only because
Alien Resurrection is a masterpiece.
Shane Black, who of course deserved to be killed off immediately in the first Predator movie. He thought, okay, I have a chance at this. Every single director that did anything besides the original and the two first ones and the AVP movies all did the exact same thing. How can I make this movie so people come to see it? I know what I'll do. I'll put as many Easter eggs and as many throwbacks and nods to the original movies that I can, just so people go, I want to go see this because supposedly there's a scene in this movie where this happens, like putting the spear in there from AVP and doing just like little stupid stuff. And not the fan base, but the people out there that are just like, oh, it's an action movie and I'm going to go see it. And they go into it like that. And then the rest of us go like, really, what were they thinking? But it's just like every other movie. It makes a ton of freaking money. And it's like, it did nothing.
Fortunately, it didn't make any money.
Yeah, that's
really,
a good thing.
It bombed.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I just don't take it too seriously because it's not connected to the Alien franchise. I don't know why they were trying to connect it to AVP because it doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
I think the spear in that movie's defense, I think just that stuff was just there just to be a cool prop that they found. They threw in the movie. I thought that part was kind of neat. I know that movie was a goddamn mess. I liked the first half hour, 40 minutes of Fugitive Predator. I thought that was cool. The rest was a shit show, but it was, at least it was,
Dude, the dogs had dreadlocks.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It was like that was ridiculous as making a PG-13 Venom. But hey, what are you gonna do?
Yep. Oh man, that was a nerve.
I'm not even gonna go there.
The directors and writers didn't.
Venom was better than the Predator.
Not even touching that.
I never thought I'd say this, but out of all of the options that we've been presented with for the ending of the Predator, I think the Iron Man type suit was the best option.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, by far.
Yeah.
It was the right decision. And
it was the arc reactor.
Yeah, previously being exposed to that.
Pretty much.
But before that, I was like, what the fucking hell were they thinking putting that in there? And then now that I've seen, the mechanical face hugger mask and the cryogenic case where either Ripley or Newt was going to be in there. The props guys did a fantastic job. But the story guys, where the fuck was the continuity team? What were they thinking? That just doesn't even fit into the
Where
universe.
was Fox executives saying, no, you can't do this. This is not a good idea. This fandom can't handle this now.
They were in the same place when they nuked the town in AVP Requiem, in the 90s.
Yeah.
That fucking movie.
As fans, we can all attest to
the movie have a different ending with the test audience and they changed it? I don't know. I could be completely wrong.
No, you're probably right.
But,
no, you're correct. There was a subplot where there were supposed to be good predators based at Area 51. And,
yeah.
And the idea was they wanted Arnie. They wanted Arnold to come back and join them.
Who did that? Who did that?
They wanted a bigger cameo, and then when they didn't have it, they're like, "Well, what's the Predator killer?"
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. A predator's on Earth. It's killing everyone. Oh, here's a suit to protect you from us.
The sad thing is, if you followed like I said, I know I'm the oddball out here, but if you followed the Predator comics, the Alien comics, AVP comics, I got the understanding of how because in the AVP comics there are different factions, and they did the same thing in the Predators movie that was a couple years ago too, where there was different sizes, different groups, and that was cool. But go from the Predator and then have a 15-foot tall one, and it was all CGI, 3/4 of it. it was a swing and miss.
Well, the
Swing and
comics
misses.
made
The
Predators.
guy who played Nebraska Williams was both in the Predator and Bird Box, and he was a soldier in both. And
Oh,
maybe time to resign, brother. Maybe time to resign.
Or I just can't forget that one scene where they're running from the bus and there's all those motorcycles, and he says, "Get to the choppers."
Oh yeah, it was so bad.
It's almost as bad
Honestly,
as, "Oh, you don't have any people, do you? You're solo." That's as bad.
Yeah.
That's how bad that is.
Oh my god! I'll call you Solo.
the group
What ship are you, Rogue? I don't know, Rogue One.
Shut up, Rogue One's
You
a
know what? The
masterpiece.
best part of the Predators movie has to be the Loonies. They I could just watch a movie with those guys. I
The
thought they were
Fugitive Predator was badass too.
The scenes in the living room, they were
Oh
pretty
my
fun.
goodness.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
only you get like 4 scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to what you were saying though, I think it was an absolute travesty to even put any kind of concept work out there that had any connection to aliens or Ripley or Newt, because this, like I said, it gets you all excited, and then you're like, but it doesn't matter because it didn't get used, and you'll never see this again.
It was
So,
almost like
why?
they're saying, "You think this was bad? We're about to add these." Like, you're lucky.
Oh,
Get your barf bags ready.
What you missed. Yeah, all right.
oh man.
A drop kick.
But the thing is, like, we can, as fans, have our own ideas of where we want these franchises to go. But we have these ideas of like, no, that's just too fucking stupid. Put it in the trash bin. But you get these people who are getting fucking paid for it, and it's like, oh, we'll just put it in there. The fans, fuck them.
We're in the wrong job, that. We're all in the wrong job.
Yes, we are in the wrong fucking career. Hire us for God's
Yeah,
sake.
we have common sense. That's our weakness.
Yes.
Well, I think that's the grave sin here is insulting your audience, and I think in these days, really, in this atmosphere, in this climate of social media, and how big of an influence it has in the success or not of films, you better fucking make a good film, because it will tank if it. I mean, although Aquaman's doing well, so I don't know what I don't know what's going on with that, but Jason Momoa probably.
Venom made money, so we're even.
Well, Venom was actually It was pretty good.
No, it wasn't.
Well, my
What's that?
question, remember how we talked about Covenant and stuff, and that's another thing too. You know what?
Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom did well too. That sucked.
Leave me alone. Don't go there, Dave. Don't
What
go
sucked?
there, Dave.
What sucked?
Yeah, you know.
Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom.
Oh Jesus, that movie was
We got the trolls out tonight.
that movie was
Yeah, I
terrible.
know, Patrick.
Fuck
but-
off.
It's not a troll. It's a fact. The movie was terrible.
It was great.
No.
Chris
That
Pratt.
Mel-
That's why they keep making him, Michael. That's why they keep
I
making
know.
him, because you think
But
they're great.
like I'm saying, social media is what the killer is. I mean, we talked about Covenant, and nothing against, but so the movie comes out in overseas first, and what happens is a certain group of people don't like it, and they hit social media, and it's just like spoiler city, and they're just like crushing the movie. And then you get those people where us as fans, we're like, you know what, I don't care what you're saying. I'm going to go see it anyway just to make sure. But a lot of the audience immediately is done. They're like, no, I'm not going to waste. If these are Alien fans and they say it's horrendous, I'm not even going to waste my money to go see it. And that's like social media in today's day is just an absolute killer. It's a promoter, but it can be a killer.
You're right, but sometimes it doesn't matter. Like, I've seen tons of people dislike Aquaman, but people are seeing it and watching it. I saw tons of people rip Jurassic Park and Venom to shreds, and they still made money. Sometimes people don't give a shit. They're gonna watch it anyway if it's entertaining enough. It's just like what bothers me in Venom doesn't bother Jaime and Patrick. That's fine. But it's sometimes people, if a movie does enough where it universally works, it'll make money. But unfortunately, with franchises like The Predator and Alien, where the audience is small enough as it is, once you eliminate the core base, you're done.
Yeah.
You're tapping out.
And that's exactly what happened with Covenant.
Stunner, Sweets and Music franchise over.
Yeah.
You can get away with that Jurassic Park because it has that universal thing. Like, I might think it sucks, but who the fuck cares? The movie's gonna speak to the little kids who buy the toys.
Hey,
And,
easy now. I bought the toys and I saw it 4 times.
That's fine. I don't blame you. You can never go wrong with dinosaur toys. But with franchises like Alien and Predator, the audience is, half of that?
9 people.
You can't make those. It's like 15, maybe 15 on a good day. You can't make those same mistakes, because once you do, it like Alien Resurrection, it was was so bad it killed the franchise. Though the AVP, both movies, even though I kind of guilty pleasure the first one, they were so bad they killed 2 franchises. I mean, hell, Aaron shut down AVPGalaxy.net. It was so bad. That's how bad the movies were. And you can't, like, you could get away with a shitty Thor movie or a bad Aquaman movie or whatever, because the audience is so big and it's universal. Millions upon millions of people see it and buy it. But you can't do that with our franchise because it's just such a small, dedicated niche space. Once it's done, that's it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that when fandom speaks on social media from a small community like ours,
different.
that's it. That's it. People will say, hey, they're an Alien fan. What'd they think? Oh, I didn't like it. The film's done.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, because it's not something you casually go see. It's not like, like, hey, you want to go watch a science fiction horror movie that I haven't seen the previous 4 installments of.
Go see Jason Momoa shirtless.
Right. Momoa. I think that's probably right. And I think there's a shitload more to unpack. But I do want to flag the fact that we're at 2 hours and that Conar is up at 4 a.m. right now. So I think it's probably a good place to wrap. Obviously, the conversation will continue. I just want to thank everybody for coming. This has been an awesome conversation, and obviously room for many more within
pleasure,
this.
Everybody.
Yes, this is a lot of fun.
For more on Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast, please visit perfectorganism.com. Perfect Organism is available for listen or download through Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, TuneIn, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the show, please visit perfectorganism.com/support. Thank you.